And good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Now, you probably noticed that I haven't offered a book special for March. Okay? Well, the reason for that being, I'm going to be out of pocket. Uh, on the 21st of March, I will be heading to Australia for 2 weeks. And prior to that, beginning next week, all right, pardon me, this is March the 2nd, if memory serves me correctly. uh, but beginning next week, I will not be doing morning musings. I will not be doing next week, beginning next week, I'll not be doing Two Guys in a Bible. I will not be doing preterist apologetics. I will not be doing my show with Zach Davis. And I'll not be doing my Friday responding to the critics. And the reason for that is simple. As demonstrated on Monday of this week, having lots of trouble with my voice. So I'm going to give my voice a break before I go to Australia because I'm going to be talking a lot. I mean, a lot in Australia. My wife and I have been talking about this. I don't know how my voice is going to stand up to it at all. I'm going to do the very best that I can. William Bell sent me a recipe for a witch's brew with, of something to drink, a concoction to soothe my throat and voice and all that kind of stuff. And I'm going to try that. Over there, they've got something called the fisherman's lozenges or something like that. They're not really very good, but they do a good job. And so I'm going to be doing that. So anyway, just fair warning, fair notice. All right. Even though I've got somebody to take care of the house and the pets, uh, they're going to house set for us. They're not going to do any book orders. All right. So if you're wanting to order some books, then let me please ask you to hold off until we get back. Now, I don't like to have to do that, but like I said, my house sitter is going to take care of the cat. They're going to take care of the house. They're not going to take care of my book orders. You know, they're not a part of my ministry. They're not a part of my exact family. They're just someone I'm getting to take care of the house. So it is what it is. Bad as I hate to, let me reiterate, going to ask that, and we'll be here, we'll still be able to fill orders until the 21st. So go ahead and order what you want to before then, and we'll do our best to get them out. All right? So, just a fair warning. All right. Now then, I had originally intended yesterday to talk about Matthew chapter 21 and the fulfillment of Sukkot. Now remember, what is Sukkot? Sukkot was the last, or next to the last, we'll be talking about that later, feast in Israel's festal calendar. It was the feast of harvest, the feast of ingathering. It was the feast of the turning of the year, and it was the feast of the joy of the nations. So what I've been doing yesterday was a little bit, not much, but a little bit of a digression from that. But I want to focus now on some New Testament passages that point us in the direction of the imminent fulfillment of Sukkot. Let me just mention one of them ever so briefly. In John chapter 4 and verse 35, Jesus is talking to his apostles. Many people believe that Sukkot was just around the corner. Some question that, but nonetheless, Jesus tells his apostles, do not say within yourselves, there are yet 4 months, and then the harvest. For lift up your eyes, for verily I say to you, the fields are already white unto harvest. Now, folks, that would have been a somewhat enigmatic statement. The actual Feast of Sukkot did not occur until the end of the year. And if Jesus was saying the feast is, or the fields are already white, literal physical fields, then that's anachronistic. No, Jesus was taking what they knew about the festival and the timing of the festival and saying, look, guys, don't worry about that, the physical. The spiritual is here. The time of the harvest is already here. Now, look, folks, when we understand that Sukkot represented resurrection, then when Jesus said the harvest or the fields are already ripe unto harvest, and in Matthew chapter 11, he said, and he was saddened because there were so few workers, so few people to engage in it. He was talking about the fields are ripe unto harvest. And it was people in need of salvation. And so John chapter 5 is a very, very powerful text when we understand the relationship between Sukkot, harvest, and resurrection. And you have Jesus saying the fields are already white unto harvest. The time for the resurrection had come. Pretty sure Jesus wasn't talking about physical resurrection. Okay, the next passage that I want to adduce is Matthew chapter 21. And I consider this a really, really powerful text, just like John chapter 4. And yet so many people, they rip it out of an eschatological context and they apply it, quote, only, unquote, to AD 70. That's inappropriate. In Matthew 21, 33 and following, and I'll just give, a summary of it for time consideration. A certain nobleman, obviously, a wealthy man, he owned a vineyard. And he let it out to vineyard keepers, husbandmen. And when the time of the harvest had come. Time for what? When the time for the harvest had come. He sent his servants to that vineyard and to those husbandmen to gather the harvest that had been done. See, it's the responsibility of the workers, the husbandmen, to gather the harvest, and then when the master's servants come, to give it over to them. So the parable is set at the time of the harvest. It is set at the time of Sukkot. And the husbandmen were wicked, and they beat those servants sent to them and would not give the harvest. The master was angry, but he sent more servants. They mistreated them, persecuted them. And finally he said, I will send my son. Surely they will respect and honor him. Well, instead they said, this is the heir. Let us kill him and take the harvest for ourselves. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting and significant. I'll begin reading verse 38, which will recapitulate what I just went over. When the husbandmen saw the son, they said among themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him. Let us seize on his inheritance. What's the inheritance? It's the vineyard. They caught him, cast him out of the vineyard, and killed him. When the Lord, therefore, of the vineyard comes, now the word come there is from the Greek word elthi. It's a cognate of erchomai. And it's used in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 to speak of the coming of the Lord in flaming fire, taking vengeance on those that do not know God and that do not obey the gospel. And the word erchomai is the word used of the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30. It is a common word to speak of the coming of the Lord. So here is Jesus speaking about the persecutors of God's saints and the persecutors, the slayers of his son. And he poses this challenge to the group gathered around him. When the Lord, therefore, of the vineyard comes, what will he do? When he comes, what will he do to those wicked husbandmen? They say, he will miserably destroy those wicked men and let out his vineyard unto other husbandmen, which shall render him the fruits in their seasons. In other words, they will give the master the harvest. Not at some protracted, long delayed time, no, at the harvest. And the time of the harvest had arrived in the parable. Just like John 4, just like Matthew 11. The time of the harvest had arrived. I mean, after all, Jesus is the son in the parable, correct? Of course. What did Jesus himself say about the time of the harvest? Well, the time of the harvest is the time of the kingdom. Matthew chapter 13, he shall gather the righteous into the kingdom, into the barn. And Jesus said, the time, the kairos, the divinely appointed time has come. The kingdom of heaven has drawn near. The time for the kingdom has arrived. Well, if the time of the kingdom had arrived, the time of the resurrection had arrived. The time of the harvest, the time for the fulfillment of Sukkot had arrived. Now look, folks, what we have in Matthew chapter 21 is Sukkot. What we have in Matthew 21 is the harvest. The time of the harvest had arrived. And the Father sent his Son at the time for the harvest. Well, if the sending of the Son was at the time of the harvest, then that means the incarnation of Jesus Christ was the time for the harvest, not some other different, extrapolated, far off time for the harvest. Because you see, as we will see, Jesus Christ himself was the first fruit of the harvest. And that harvest was to take place when? When the master of the vineyard would come. Folks, how can anyone say, oh, well, yeah, Matthew chapter 21 is certainly about the fall of Jerusalem and the judgment of Israel in AD 70, but we're still looking for the real harvest. Well, Matthew 21 is about the time of the harvest. It is the time for Sukkot to be fulfilled. And it is the time of the judgment of those who killed the Lord at his coming. Folks, there is no other coming even slightly suggested in the text. There is no suggestion that the coming mentioned here to destroy those who killed Jesus was typological of a different coming of the Lord at a different time of harvest, of a different age. No, there's one harvest, there's one judgment, there's one coming of the Lord. And it was in judgment of those who killed Jesus. This is not the only time that this motif is carried out. But I'm out of time. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you next Monday.